Okay, I've been sitting in this cyberpunk bar since the last video ended, contemplating this one. It's been a lengthy binger. Most of my gear got pawned off, or it was taken by the barmaid. She seems the grabby type. Anyways, creative openings take work, you know? You gotta find that perfect blend of emotions to captivate an audience. Then once you do, you need to hold on to them. World building, plot development, you know how it is. And of course, a good foil for your protagonist. Someone who will challenge your perspective, your strength, your resolve. Or, if you're the writers of DawnTrail, you just throw some random crap together, never bothering to double check your work, clock out early, and go beat off to your mindless self-indulgence. No, I'm quite certain that's how the writing process actually went. I bet money that happened more than once. Welcome once again, people, to this channel's unceremonious takedown of Final Fantasy XIV DawnTrail. Be warned, this video will contain spoilers for 7.0 DawnTrail, and any other franchise I may reference. Discretion is advised. It never failed to amaze me how DawnTrail's beginning could both be terribly rushed and a dragged-out borehole. It established the world and the impending quest almost immediately, yet did so through lengthy exposition that was putting me to sleep so badly, I was begging for Freddy Krueger to put me out of my misery. And this is before the story had really started. Little did I know, it was all downhill from there. But it's during this time that our first antagonist is revealed, in the most mediocre, cliché, and inept fashion imaginable.
Oh. Oh.
Of course, that's it. Wuklamat is so afraid of the coming contest that she went crying for special help. The kitten comes to the house cat's defense. Pathetic. Since when was our nation overrun by mewling weaklings?
Okay, first off, standard bullying practices like this are cheap and lazy. Wanting to portray your protagonist's rival as villainous is fine. Plenty of characters start off being total pricks. The Hound from Game of Thrones, total a-hole, becomes one of the most endearing characters by the end, and is one of the few to not get utterly cucked by the series finale. The problem, like so much of DawnTrail, is that they keep doing the same thing constantly with Bakul Jaja. Over and over, he is brazenly evil and brutish, commits horrible offenses, kidnapping, cheating, releasing a violent monster that could kill scores of people, more on that shortly. This two-headed lizard is a walking mass of cliches and writing tropes. Even Garlemald's writing had higher standards, and they wore edgelord armor with zero irony. Also, just to cover our priorities, this furry twat becomes the king, and she never replaces our lost tacos. I want that on record. My spite for her grows by the moment. It was astonishing how crude they made Bakul Jaja, almost as though they binge-watched every season of the 1980s Transformers cartoon and formulated a character around that. Everything is designed to make you despise him. There is nothing redeeming. Until they try to redeem him. Lord, there is so much wrong with this story, I'll be bitch-fitting about it till the next expansion. So, it's almost immediately into the rite of secession that Bakul starts causing mayhem. He threatens the administrators, openly schemes ways to take advantage of the other contestants. The first clash comes during the trial of reeds. When we're repairing the float, goddamn I still hate that thing, Bakul tries to sabotage our efforts, very openly, in front of multiple witnesses. This is where the problem started to unravel, not just with him, but the story itself. Because why? The Spectre Hell is this shitard not disqualified for interfering with the other contestants. The administrator straight up says if he forces their hand, word will be sent to the capital, and he'll be removed from the right. Why the hell is he allowed to cheat to such an obvious degree? Why would Gulul Jaja willingly ignore such actions from someone vying for leadership? What would happen if Bakul's scheme succeeded? Would he let him rule? That would devastate the people. Would he overrule the outcome? If so, then not disqualifying Bakul is a waste of everybody's and the plot's time. If this is meant to be a test of the others and their character, as Gulul suggests after our bout with him, that is incredibly risky. Someone could very easily get killed. Damn, he abducts Wuklamal later on. She was in danger. Any number of things could have gone wrong when she refused to cooperate. No sensible explanation as to why Bakul never faces consequences is ever given. It is never even brought up once. These are your children, you deadbeat. Why are you like this?
You team-killing fucktard?
If an ounce of sense was applied to this script, Bakul would have been written off within the first handful of hours. But there is no sense in DawnTrail's writing, so Bakul shall remain, for no discernible reason other than the rest of the plot needs to happen. and you and I both know it gets much, much worse. But credit to the writers where it is due. They did at least establish Bakul as a legitimate threat. The way he shrugged off Wook's attack like that, along with knowledge that blessed siblings are extremely unique and gifted, it set up a potential stake in our adventure, and I do look forward to seeing how the writers will maintain this character as a credible... Oh, for fuck's sake. They ruined that too before the plot could do anything with it. Seriously, writers? Before the Valigamanda fight, long before Wook Lamah's final brawl with Bakul, and you're already going out of the way to make him a joke. Tell me, what the hell are we supposed to think about Bakul at this point? He's sniveling, backstabbing, and now, not long after showing us he's at least a potent physical threat, you have him slapped into near irrelevance. Zeru here ended any attempt to see the blessed siblings as legitimate in one deft move. You can argue that this is more about Zeru himself, asserting him as a threat later on. Yeah, no, he doesn't fare any better, we'll get there soon. Whatever the writer's motivations were with this scene, they gave us an in-your-face foil to provoke and antagonize us, then went out of their way to make him a fool, repeatedly. Bakul is about as threatening as a Namazu at this point. He truly is the embodiment of a Saturday morning cartoon villain. This sounds like a plot Starscream would get caught up in. Any iteration of him will suffice, he's a bitch in all of them. And now, the only established antagonist has been made into a circus performance. Lord give me strength. Honestly, there are so many dumbass moments in DawnTrail that exist for one reason alone. The plot says so. The predestined direction of the story established by the writer's whim. Whether or not it makes any sense is completely irrelevant. Motivations driven by I say so or I feel like it lead to some of the most incompetent storytelling imaginable. And it ruins everything. Everybody. You'll see. The villains in DawnTrail have some of the worst writing in 14's entire history. They make La Brea look like Heath Ledger's Joker by comparison. And that's without the Pandemonium raids adding some depth to them. The closest competency Bakul gets is when he abducts Wook Lamah. And honestly, I can't think of much to add to this. Yeah, he gets one of Wook's keystones, which was the goal. Not like it matters much, Wook gets her keystone back soon enough. His nefarious plan sees fruition, but is short-lived. It's hardly a worthy victory. And nothing bad happens to Bakul. No punishment. For no reason. That's getting more than a little grating by this point. I could list off every example of this guy's abhorrent actions, all justifying his dismissal. But let's be real. We only need the one. Okay, driven further by desperation, Bakul unleashes this beast back onto the world. A monster not even the mighty Galul Jaja and his merry band could stop. I'm not sure what Bakul's plan was beyond just blowing us down, or hoping the beast kills us. I mean, what happens after Valigamanda is finished and finds you along its path? Your track record thus far will make a high school dropout self-esteem replenish itself. This is a horribly short-sighted plan with far-reaching consequences, barring the moral depravity of it. Bakul looks like an even bigger reject by freeing a monster that, if it does as he desires, will only wind up killing him and everybody else. Why are we supposed to take this person seriously? They've done nothing to prove they're a worthy threat, or even a mild one. This is easily the most wicked thing Bakul will do, and the script quickly sweeps it under the rug, especially since we slay the beast. All he did was make the rest of us, including Wook, look like heroes for succeeding where the original Dawn Servant failed. Releasing Valigamanda is completely counterproductive. Bakul is a moron, nothing more. And I'm left asking, once more, why was he not disqualified for this? If any of his behavior merits it, releasing Valigamanda would be it. But more important than disqualification, why is he not imprisoned for his actions? He attacked the keepers of the beast's prison, set it free knowing the dangers. What legal system does Tyrol run on where you can openly commit crimes on this scale and not face repercussions? I can't tell who's more retarded here, Bakul for doing the deed, or Galul for allowing it to go unpunished. The freaking Purge movies weren't just tolerant towards abhorrent crimes, and that's the premise of the damn movies. And again, as is the usual case with the crap writing in this expansion, the reasons why Bakul is not punished never gets explained. After we defeat Valigamanda, we just celebrate the win like it's a historic occasion. Probably best we don't tell him our list of accomplishments, might spoil the moment. A mentally ill elemental bird wouldn't break the top 10 for us. And after all that, it's back to the competition. Not one thing about Bakul comes up. He commits an atrocity and gets away with it. Forget the grumpy bird monster, this whole continent is mentally ill. And this isn't everything. There is a great deal more evidence that Tyrol is the worst place on Atheris. It's straight up depraved. Just wait and see. I know I keep on saying that, but I'm good for it. We all know how terrible this game is by now. Bakul's next screw-up occurs after he abducts Woklama's baby daddy to ransom her other keystones. And yeah, if you watch my part 2 video, you'll know how I feel about this fight, the stupidity behind it, everything. So I'll keep this short by just saying,
You know what? I fucking hate you.
actually, scratch that. There is something else we need to cover. You remember how the culinary challenge we had just completed required these banana peels, found only in the lower Mamuk area? And you know how Zeru and Bakul failed because they couldn't acquire any due to the pathway being blocked off, supposedly by the storm? Yeah, watch this.
And he goes and forgets he had the way blocked.
What? That was his doing?
Okay, so not only did Bakul get his hide whipped, not only was he embarrassed and belittled just to make Queen Fury of the Shitbag clan look good, but he also failed what was an otherwise simple challenge because of a block in the pathway to a key ingredient that he created. The dude straight up cucked himself out of an easy keystone because his thoughts went right to villainy and abduction. Everything in the story has made him a joke. How many more times can this game shit all over the guy? He's weak, he's stupid, he's infantile. Bakul up to the final challenge in the right has been nothing but a joke character for us to poke and prod while we play lapdog to the most insufferable character ever conceived in this franchise. You would think after all the damage dealt to Bakul's character, he'd simply fade into obscurity and never bother us again. It's not like they've done anything at all to make him likable or redeemable. Nothing to indicate he's not that bad a guy, just misguided. There can be no redemption for him after this, right? Yeah, no. Shortly after, they try to rationalize Bakul's actions and make him redeemable, after shitting on him for the entire narrative. I would like it on record. I hate everything that is about to be discussed. Terribly hated. Hated more than fruits and vegetables on my pizza. More than an OnlyFans model bitching about being objectified. More than... Okay, not more than her, but it's close. You see, it turns out that the blessed siblings have a dark history behind them. Indeed, they are gifted, but the process of giving birth to one is incredibly risky. They're specifically bred, but only 1 in 100 ever break out of their shells. Basically, the blessed siblings are a eugenics program, with a 1% chance of survival. And okay, this was a genuinely shocking moment. One of a very few in DawnTrail, but still. Bakul's very existence is built upon a mountain of dead, stillborn children. That is horrifying. And sure, it does explain much of his behavior, his abrasiveness. Survivor's guilt of this magnitude is a treacherous thing. He has a legacy to live up to no matter the cost. Something another antagonist suffers from. That the people here are desperate enough to resort to such barbaric means should be a testament to their hardships and their difficulties. This was almost an intriguing development. I did feel for the guy, but as we should expect by now, they screwed it up almost immediately. Because Bakul doesn't do anything of note to make amends for his actions, yet the game will almost immediately excuse him, forgive him, and he suffers no consequences. In fact, by the epilogue, he's rewarded. Do you people not understand how redemption arcs work? You don't just have an excuse to be an asshole and are instantly forgiven for being an asshole. This message brought to you by someone who is kind of an asshole. That's just the motivation, the starting point. It's a process. And when you ignore that process, nobody is going to believe the results. You have not earned it. Bakul Jaja is a terrible person. That is all he's been up until this moment. A brute, a weakling, a fool. Also, you can prop up your golden girl and make her look better. And now you throw in this sympathy story to make him not such a bad guy, after treating him constantly like such a bad guy. Just like Woklama, you did nothing with this character for him to earn the emotions you're imposing on us. The only efforts made were 1 or 2 comments from Bakul himself about doing this for their siblings, a clear reference to the piles of dead babies. Yeah, I'm not sugarcoating that. I have zero sympathy for the people in this situation. You'll understand why. The sad thing is, despite the lack of effort, the endeavors to earn his development, this moment with Bakul had potential. In subsequent scenes when Alexandria attacks, we see Bakul leap to the defense of others. He sets aside the pressure of being the icon his people wanted and just tries to do what's right. He's flabbergasted when people thank him for it, but is also enticed by the prospect.
Thank you.
Still rings odd in my ears. The thank yous. But I could get used to it.
This is rather half decent, showing him that there's another path he had never considered before. And when the people are at their lowest, he rallies behind Woklama to inspire them to hope. Also, a nice gesture. I do sincerely wish they made more of an effort with Bakul, and that he suffered some penalty for his earlier crimes, some effort being made. He may well have been my favorite character with this turnaround in his personality. But of course, we can't have nice things, and more than 30 seconds of not dry humping Wuklama's leg is forbidden, so Bakul does not get the attention needed to make those moments mean anything. And that's just a case of neglect. What the writers did next with the Mamul, their struggles, the very purpose of the Blessed Siblings. It's no exaggeration to say it ruined any prospect I had left in this story. It truly was the worst piece of writing I think I've ever seen. For you see, the reason the lizard folk of Mamuk cling to this horrid eugenic program is because their homeland is barren of resources. No major veins of ore, they can't even grow much food in this environment. I don't recall if they mentioned anything about lumber. I mean, these big-ass trees could probably supply the whole country. Carpentry would be a valuable skill set at this level of technological development, but barring all that, they have nothing to work with, leaving their homeland barren, destitute, and bars the people here from any level of prominence into Raleigh society. Just look at the city. Half the buildings don't have roofs. Either they're that flat-ass broke or the development team ran out of money, take your pick. Thus, the people turn to Blessed Siblings, whose strength and power can make them relevant, rise the Mamul to prominence. Okay, it's not the best argument I've seen for a society being backward savage, but I can't accept it, mostly. And sure enough, our off-brand messiah here is determined to find a solution to these people's hardships. And we do, in about 30 minutes. Centuries of cultural development and adaptability to their environment, decades of peace where the peoples of this country could have endeavored towards new solutions to their problems. And the writers solve not only the cause of their hardships, not only find a solution to those hardships, they do so in such a cheap, cockamamie manner. I genuinely cannot understand how any self-respecting writer could have read this crap and approved it. I would excuse myself to the strip club again, but I don't think ample tits and ass is going to save us this time. So apparently, the forest was battered by a meteor shower centuries ago. It's where all these cenotes come from, and all the glowing rocks in the ground you see are surrounding the city. Kona, using his staunch scientific mind and about 10 minutes of investigating, determines that the meteorites had altered the area, making it unsuitable for most crops to grow. With a thorough analysis, he can determine what foodstuffs are viable so the Mamul can grow their own crops. And everybody is happy. That's it. That's all it takes to change everything forever. Centuries of frustration and mistrust just evaporates overnight, just like real life. There was so much wrong with this. Centuries you lived down here struggling to survive, and never once did it occur to anyone that the glowing goddamn rocks on the ground may have been part of the problem. Did anybody ever think to pry some of them out, just to see if maybe that did anything? These folks are rather superstitious. They think their land is cursed or something. Okay, that would hamper progress, sure, but just one person looking into this is all it would have taken. That is not hyperbole. Kona is all that was needed to fundamentally alter this region's advancement. Is this technology he used recently developed? I don't remember that being mentioned, and if it is, that's mighty contrived with the writing, don't you think? That the tool needed to solve a centuries-old problem was invented, just as it was needed to solve said centuries-old problem? I've got a taste of bile just pondering it. These people are inept. I don't just mean the Mamul. The entirety of Tural looks like a den of savage rejects that should have been culled to extinction generations ago. Cause why the hell did nobody ever try to help in the last 80 years of peace? I thought you were all one people. You sure as hell preach working together as a strong motif, but everyone seems to have their heads shoved permanently up their own asses. I guess Wuklama is a suitable representative. Neat. Just one example to get my point across, the Reach Challenge, which is officially far less stupid than this was. The Hanu uses flow to stimulate ether, specifically for crop growth. Could this not have been adapted by anyone, to solve the crops issue in Mamuk? It seems to share many similarities. Did nobody in all of Tural consider this? What about the Hrothgar? They occupy the same forest. Have they had this problem? Is there no trade between these two, no mutual interest? Have the Mamul truly been left to fend for themselves all this time? You know, I want to take back what I just said about their motivations being somewhat reasonable. They are not. Because there has been a blessed sibling on the throne for 80 years, and nothing about these people's lives have improved. Why are they clinging to a tradition that has already been applied and failed? Speaking of, you, Galul, I was enjoying you, but now I cannot help but wonder what the hell purpose you even serve. You are a blessed sibling, meaning you would know the circumstances of your birth, the pile of stillborn corpses beneath your feet, And yet, Gulul Jaja never did anything to end this barbaric practice for nearly 100 years. Why? Why did he never try to improve his own homeland in all that time? Was this also a test for those competing for Dawn Servant? That would mean Gulul willfully let this barbaric practice continue for decades just to instill a lesson in somebody at an indiscriminate date later. That is insane. This man is insane. What the hell has he been doing since the country was founded? He has intimate knowledge of both the horrible truth of the two-headed Mamul, as well as an understanding of why these people still cling to it. This man was in the perfect position to end this debacle, and never did. And no, Charlayan technology does not bar him from responsibility, because Gulul has had Charlayan scientists visit the country before. With Kryle's grandfather, Galuf, Gulul brought him here 20 years ago to investigate the Golden City. He has invited foreigners to his country for the purpose of studying phenomena. Ketterman is a renowned traveler, also from Eorzea. He has lived here for decades. He lives in the region in question, for God's sakes. Gulul genuinely had everything needed to fix his problem within the parameters the writers just established, and the people of Tural just refused, their leader included, for no reason. It's never explained why, because it's terrible writing, and terrible writing per its own nature can never explain itself, as that would dismantle the entire narrative, and so it's allowed to remain, like an infected wound, spreading and poisoning everything else. Let this be one of the channel's golden rules. Terrible writing infects and destroys everything around it, and ignoring its presence only allows it to spread. Fucking write it down. This solution to grow crops is pretty short-sighted itself. I mean, to provide food is the bare minimum you need to live. There's still no trade outside of fruits and vegetables. No industry. Maybe the story will tackle this in a future patch. Maybe a beast tribe, perhaps. But let's be real, being able to grow vegetables in your backyard is hardly winning the lottery. Also, to sneak a few laughs into the rant, because God knows we need some chuckles right now, the Mamul suddenly become friendly after these events. Yeah, their blessed siblings, whom they had thrown all their support behind, failed completely. The piles of dead babies was for nothing. And yet, everybody is happy, inviting other ethnic groups to the area, being pals and whatnot. All because they can grow food now. They saw racism with vegetables. They ended prejudice and intolerance with basic agricultural practices. Imagine watching 12 Years a Slave, and someone handed Michael Fassbender's character a fucking carrot, and now he's a nice guy. Oh my god. The Cabbage guy from Last Airbender. He and his cabbages were the key to peace with the Fire Nation all along. Aang, you fool, how did you not notice? Oh god, give me a second. I'm lightheaded. I haven't laughed this hard in years. Oh lord. Whew. Steering back to Bukul Jaja, this whole debacle also delegitimizes his very existence. If anybody on this godforsaken continent ever used their brains, the blessed siblings would have been weeded out by pragmatism itself centuries ago. So his motivation, his excuses for acting the way he does, the atrocities he committed, have no merit. This entire section of the game was a waste of our time. It played our antagonist as a fool, then tried to turn him into a sympathetic and misunderstood villain, and then laughably invalidated the very cause of that sympathy, with zero awareness. This was a contrived solution, conjured only to the surprise of none of us paying attention, to make Wuklama look good. Yeah, she gets credit for everything that happens here. And the worst thing is, she didn't do shit. Kona, he did all the work, as usual. Kona investigated the area, used the accumulated knowledge of his education to survey and discover where the issues lay, and he proposed a solution of importing crop seeds better suited to the environment. He did all the work. But who does Kona praise for this revolutionary achievement? His sister. It's just after this, during the final challenge, that Kona relinquishes his claim to the throne, to support Wuklama. He gives her the credit for caring just so gosh darn much. You know, if it weren't for her, he never would have... Oh wait, Kona's whole thing is importing technology to improve the lives of Tural. He would have done this without Wook's influence whatsoever, and her whipping Bukul Jaja into playing nice and getting the locals to share their woes was equally contrived. There were plenty of workarounds to this the game completely ignores. Yet still, she gets the credit, because the writers apparently have a third leg for this twat.
Look what I found.
I found it.
Look at what I took credit for finding.
Kona built a train system that has greatly benefited the people in the Gunsmoke region. He's already improving the country and he's not even Dawn Servant. Yet despite doing all the real work to improve Mamuk's circumstances, ending the need for blessed siblings, allowing the different groups to heal and progress together, something a proper Dawn Servant would do, Woklama gets all the credit and wins the throne despite offering little more than her usual preaching. Bakul's mediocre development, the Mamul's plight, and the shit-ass, half-ass, dumb-ass solution conjured out of thin air to solve it all in under an hour was just to validate Woklama. Is it still a mystery why nobody likes you? I said in the last video Woklama was an obsession of the writers, but that was being polite. It's straight up narcissism. She is a wish fulfillment character or a self-insert. Something that exists so the writer can feel good about themselves, because this character is just the bestest ever, and so are they by extension. Everything is cheaper because of it. So much time wasted, but cool is a joke, and Tural is a nation of baby killers and delinquents. Hey, Hades, buddy, why didn't you and the Ascians use this continent for your calamities? Everybody here is far dumber than Eorzea. You would have had zero difficulty. Atheris would have been made whole millennia ago with these tards as your only competition. Think, Emmett, think! Oh, wait. I have another joke you guys are gonna love. You know the train I just mentioned? So later on when we retrofit it to attack Alexandria, they play that Smiles song during the montage, a song about coming together for mutual benefit and being happy and smiling a bunch and all that bullshit, while building a kamikaze freight train. And this is a Japanese video game. I do not know how that one slipped by everybody at Square Enix, but I am so happy that it did. That shit was hilarious, but not as funny as solving racism with seeds. We are halfway through the game already, and this is all the genius developers have given us. And the only other person left to take up the antagonist role has less substance in your average Twitter junkie's social life. Yep, it's time to talk about Zerulja, the former Dawn Servant's son and penultimate villain of DawnTrail. Also, before we proceed, I understand that I've been mispronouncing Zerul's name the whole time. It's pronounced Zoral or Zora. You see, I can't even pronounce it right. I tried, I failed, I don't know why I can't. The names in this game are unnerving. I still can't say the Wild West area name properly either. And I played this game on mute, mostly for the sake of my sanity, so I apologize in advance if that gets annoying for you. Zerul it is. He's a little shit anyways. I know I tend to be super negative in these videos, no doubt my pessimism rubs folks the wrong way, so I like to flip the script, just for fun, and discuss what I actually liked about Zerul. His boss fight kicked ass. DawnTrail's music was hit or miss for me, but the soundtrack here was astounding. It got me super hyped for the fight. And that's it. That's all the nice things I have to say about him. Because for most of DawnTrail, Zerul is hardly a character. He barely speaks, which could say a lot about his personality if he was ever utilized for more than 2 minutes flat to develop beyond the most superficial qualities. But that doesn't happen. You want to know just how little substance Zerul has? Look back to the final challenge in Mamuk. We arrived to find Zerul beaten down in his attempts to combat his father's specter. When that failed, he attacked the administrator of the test in vain, earning him a disqualification. Okay. So this gets him kicked out, but Bakulja releases Angry Birds and nothing happens. Phenomenal. You may be wondering though why I haven't included visuals for Zerul's fight. Well, that's because we didn't see it. The other characters just told us what happened. And this game, already drawn out with incessant chatter, you withheld an action scene for someone who will be a major antagonist moving forward. This is just a perfect in a nutshell summation of DawnTrail. I hope Raptoon sees this. It'll make their parody extremely easy. Just have the gang stand around and talk about what happens. It's easy money, guys. You work hard, you deserve this. Honestly, beyond this, it's almost impossible to give much of an analysis of Zerul because so little is invested in him. It's almost as though giving all the attention to one person is detrimental to the script. That shortcoming with Zerul's fight is a recurring theme, in fact. Twice during the competition, we see Crow receive dark premonitions of Zerul's character. Here, at the start of the competition,
deep and unknowable like an abyss, yet at the same time a roaring, unquenchable fire.
And again after he botches the culinary challenge. Two different instances teasing this seemingly stoic character, where the game just tells us what he's about. Doesn't show us, at least not until much later. And perhaps that's what the writers were thinking, foreshadowing Zerul's villainy. The problem remains that they did virtually nothing with him, leaving us with little more than a few minor details to understand his character and motivations, and then having his failure at the final challenge happen off-screen. It drives home the utter indifference the developers had towards Zerul. The few clips we get paint a very plain view of the man. His bout with Bakul where he one-shots him, Zerul staring into space in every other cutscene. One might contend this makes him appear stoic and regimented, a professional soldier on the surface, yet when the stress builds as his failures accumulates, his anger breaks free, revealing his true colors. But all that still leaves us with the question, why? Why is this the path Zerul pursues? What is the motivation, the strategy? He gives only one regarding his ambitions for the throne, conquest, to teach people the folly of conquest. Okay, a little more detail would be nice. Why is that your go-to? Plenty of folks seem averse to the concept of war. Kona had his supporters, they didn't crave conflict, merely innovation. Plenty of people have respect for Zerul's combat prowess, of course. Strength alone is enough to inspire support. But outside of a few examples, few Turali seem keen on war. The only exceptions may be the Mamul themselves, who are prone to travel abroad as mercenaries to gain experience. Zerul's motivations are as radical as they are narrow. This sounds like something Thanos would have conjured up after a weekend binger with his edgelord crew. It's demented, just like killing half the universe was. Basic critical thinking can show that Zerul's conquest mentality has no basis nor foundation by which to explore his rationale. His father is a major motivator for him, and he didn't unite the country through conflict. None of his other family members desire war, so why does he? In fact, what we see regarding Zerul's family, there is little reason for him to be the way that he is. Not without further data, at least. His father, Golul, led the continent to peace after centuries of conflict, and it's well known he did so through diplomacy, with strong moral values. Golul was not a conqueror, at least not in the traditional sense. The stories of his exploits to bring Turul under one banner is common knowledge. One of the first things we do is examine these columns detailing said exploits, and the secession challenges are meant to recreate them. Why would Zerul, who was raised under such a man, hold such contrary values? His adoptive siblings do not. Kona is rather cold at first, not unlike his brother, but he still possesses a moral core. He drops everything to save Wook when she's abducted, aids in her endeavors more than once, and improves the lives of many while he's at it. Why the hell didn't he win Dawn Servant again? Talk about wasted opportunity. My point is, everyone else has adopted similar morals except for Zerul, and because his character gets such minute attention, we have very little understanding as to why. The only explanation I could find in the game lies in his repeated moniker, the resilient son. Two heads like Golul normally can't produce offspring, making his son Zerul a unique birth. Such miracles can put tremendous pressure on someone to live up to the standards that come with it, especially when your father united the entire country as an established battle-hardened warrior. Zerul has a legacy to fulfill, and this can account for much of his fervent personality, except because there's always an exception with everything in this game. Golul's legend is well known and widespread. Zerul would grow up with the knowledge that his father used non-lethal approaches whenever possible to bring Turul together, and yet that sentiment is never passed on to his son. Sure, in storytelling it's common to see one's progeny break away from their parents and pursue their own interests, their own legacy. On the surface, Zerul's more militaristic mindset could be nothing more than a child rebelling against the father's tendencies. If it were just Zerul and Golul Jaja, maybe this could work. With two adoptive siblings who turned out decent, shit writing excluded of course, it leaves us with a hefty contradiction the story never addresses. Why does Zerul specifically choose such a bloody path for his ambitions, but not his siblings? Wook was raised by the Dawn Servant since before she can remember, so we can't argue it was something during his more formative years. Did the pressure of being Golul's biological child really push him so far? It might have, though we're given practically nothing about said childhood to provide context. Zerul is simply different because the story says he is, and we're not meant to question it. In fact, this drags up an even bigger faux pas with not just Zerul, but the whole family. We have no dynamic with these people. Think about it, name one scene with just the four of them. Zerul has no time with just Wook or Kona. He doesn't even have a single scene with Golul Jaja, his own father, outside of when he shanks him. His father is pivotal to Zerul's character, and they don't have a single scene together until his son's gone full dark side. It is impossible to get a read on how these people are with each other outside of what the game outflat tells us, which is not only bad writing, but it's boring as hell. Zerul's relationship with his father is vital. I want to know how these two get along, if they get along, how they behave when it's just the two of them. Golul mentions none of his children being ready for the throne. If that's true, what has he ever done to help with that? Why does it seem like he's never actually tried to understand his own son? It's not like DawnTrail has a theme about that, understanding people, bridging gaps. Where is that for Zerul? They straight up say he's foolish for not understanding himself or what he had, despite the fact that nobody ever tries to see things from his perspective. Unlike the other two antagonists in DawnTrail, they certainly spare some of that sentiment for Sphen. Wook states multiple times how she understands what the fairy tale princess is trying to do, even though she's the most responsible for all the bloodshed in this game. The baby-killing eugenics program in Mamuk, we aren't supposed to judge that, but Zeru's suffering a fatal case of nepotism, and suddenly passing judgment is permitted. The writers lack such an understanding of their own themes, their penultimate villain is thrown completely to the wayside, afforded none of the luxury others have been given, some of whom have done far worse than himself. Stellar development, folks. These relationships could have clarified much of the problem if effort was made. Was Zeru always like this? Has he ever had a connection with either of his siblings? We can guess how he would have felt having two outsiders brought into their home, taking attention away from his father. Perhaps this led to animosity. We don't know anything because the story doesn't show us anything and doesn't develop anything. We don't know how Galul was as a father. Yeah, I like the guy truly, but the horrid writing surrounding the family makes the former Dawn servant look like kind of a shitty parent. Wook is self-absorbed. She never did anything of value in her life, yet the rites were practically tailor-made for her personality. And Zeru is cold-hearted. He disowns everything his father created while wanting to succeed in everything his father created. It's fucking confusing. Kona is the only well-adjusted sibling. It's no wonder he ran off to old Charlian. Compared to these freaks, a nation of pompous bookworms would be a monumental improvement. Or perhaps Kona, being the more stoic and quiet type, helped them both get along. Maybe Kona is like this in part thanks to Zeru. He might have inspired his adopted sibling in some way, or maybe they hate each other's guts, I don't know. Zeru's personality could have been explained by different parenting standards. Maybe Galul was rough on him being his natural child, meanwhile the other two being adopted were treated with greater preference. That may well have pushed Zeru to extreme lengths to legitimize himself, but like everything else, we get nothing to work with. Lacking any true insight into how these people were raised robs us of understanding how they are now, outside of making them different for the sheer sake of it. Which only makes Zeru's actions and motivations all the more confusing. His plan to start a war to teach the folly of war has no basis, outside of making him a bad guy. And seeing as to how he starts a conflict after everybody seems mighty content with themselves at the rite's completion, pretty much defeats that purpose too. And the only other motivation we get is after his boss fight. Which...
How could I be a father when my own slammed me? He left me nothing.
There it is, folks. That is what all of this boils down to. Daddy issues. The disease-riddled prostitute of character motivations. And why does Zeru have daddy issues? He explains being left nothing of value. Did not receiving the throne mess him up that much? If so, why didn't Zeru take his father's legacy to heart and pursue an understanding of his people, rather than just violence? If his father's legacy and living up to his standard was truly that important, why does Zeru reject so much of it? Based on cues from his boss fight, Zeru seems to have been pressured to do great things all his life to succeed his father, even as he admonishes so much of who his father was. This does remind me of the first Thor movie in the MCU. Thor rejects his father's bid for peace, he wants conflict, craves it. Thor gets banished for his recklessness and cruelty, but that exile was an experience. Thor learned, he changed, became a better man. Was Zeru never afforded this chance? Again, Galul seems aware his son isn't ready for leadership. If the succession rite is their test, their lesson, that is a terrible time to teach your children how to be leaders. Shoot, Thor's ascension was cut short specifically because of his and the Frost Giant's actions. DawnTrail's writers could have learned a few things from that. Zeru is both a poster boy for nepotism and a contrarian to it, which is grating. I am at a genuine loss. Zeru had perhaps the best narrative potential of the antagonists, mainly thanks to being so closely related to the other major players, yet the writers refuse to give him his dues. All we're left with is a feeble-minded and violent Ingrid whose only true purpose seems to be introducing Alexandria to the plot. I cannot find any other reason for his lack of development outside of Zeru, like Bakul Jaja, like so many of the other characters in DawnTrail simply being a means to the end for the plot to unfold. I mean, it would explain a lot about his behavior after he reached the Everkeep, in which I mean he turns into a total bitch. Yeah, this rematch with Wook, if it even qualifies as a rematch, I think I blinked once and the action was already over. You guys never miss a chance to make it worse, don't ya? Almost instantly, Wook shatters Zeru's regulator, the one that gave him the edge against their old dad. One of the only things we see in detail is that Zeru is an accomplished warrior, a gifted combatant. yet he couldn't guard his weak spot, that being his soul regulator. That was too much for him to handle. See the problem here? We took the only substantial chunk of his character and diluted it, just to give Queen Fury another win. Sure, she doesn't beat him outright like with Bakul, but Zeru runs away regardless, planting this firmly as yet another Wuklama victory. And how many is that now? Oh yeah, all of them. This is the second major antagonist to lose to her, specifically to her. Zeru loses almost immediately, then retreats as his army gets his hide whipped too. Shit. Okay, alright, we need to talk about this. When the freaking Tron bots return, the second assault on Turol, for the sake of time convenience, I will forgo bashing Zeru for the standard villain cliche of letting your enemies live just so they can come back stronger and show you what for. It's stupid, I hate it, I don't care what argument might be made for it, it needs to die in a pit of magma, but I digress. As for the first invasion, did anybody else jump for joy when this happened? Because I leaped out of my chair, not out of some sadistic pleasure seeing innocent people get slaughtered, but because something interesting was finally happening after tens of hours of pure boredom. That just so happened to be innocents getting slaughtered. And there were some good parts. I mean, we got to see the robot army tear through the place. It was horrific, it was surreal. I honestly thought the game was going to take this plot seriously. Then came the second wave. And then we were shown a victory that was so ridiculously one-sided, I thought the game had been bought out and produced by Lucasfilm. That is a special kind of shittiness. Yeah, sure, some parts are cool. Seeing Vitra swoop in was badass. Talking Dragon best friends for the win. Even though they didn't give Vitra any lines. Nor do we see him again after this. Also, I'm very interested to know the details of this alliance with Thavnair. I'm sure a story this detailed would impossibly pull the solution out their asses and never follow through with it. No sirree. Everything else though was shit. Yeah, I'm not being nice. This was stupid. You set up this advanced, ruthless, and unfeeling robotic army that could wreck the whole country if they wanted to. Then the next time they're involved, our heroes access the bullshit side of the Force and push them back on all fronts. And a couple of cutscenes, eliminating the threat to Turol and significantly weakening the threat of Alexandria and our primary antagonists. Why is it every time they have something halfway decent, these assholes go above and beyond to ruin it? What was the point of anything? They set up this legitimate danger, instilling fear as to the harm they'd commit when they return, and then you made them out to be a joke. Again. Just look at this. This Western film star wannabe is standing out in the open shit-talking the literal robot army, and nothing happens to him. I assume these machines received a Stormtrooper upgrade with their aiming software. Our characters stand around and just lightly like this were a casual stroll. Even the way the robots move is embarrassing. Why, yes, walk slower, why don't you? Who programmed these things to move in an intimidating but impractical manner? Who would build an army to work like this? They have people cornered, and still they move like stale molasses. For no reason. And the warships get wrecked before they can do anything. Stellar craftsmanship. This scene isn't cool, it's childish, it's comical, and it wastes any investment we may have had left in the story. Why should we be afraid of Zeru? His army just got wiped out. And then he pouts and runs away. Once more, this professional soldier is proven to be incompetent by his quick and easy defeat. The careless strategies used, like programming his army to move in bunched groups, out in the open, with no shields or other defensive utilities. How was this moron ever going to conquer other countries again? He couldn't conquer the local saloon. Yes, it's quite inspiring seeing all the people we've met come together when it matters to beat back their mutual enemy in a stunning display and a musical score to accompany it. No doubt many people were mesmerized by these cutscenes. It just ruins everything the story has to work with. Also, feel free to clap your hands, because this is as close as a science get to being useful for freaking anything. And Zerulja is no exception. His reaction to these events is sheer frustration and turning on the Alexandrians, which is the bad guy equivalent to killing their underlings for matters outside their control. Add that to the list of cliches. So, to recap, Zerul got a rematch with Wook, lost. Zerul's army launched its second wave, and lost. Big time. By the way, said army is something he's had years to prepare for. Time moves way faster within the barrier. Zerul had literal decades to prepare and account for anything, and still loses almost immediately the next time he tries anything. And Sphen has a vetted interest in his success for better or worse. So she looks like a twat as well. DawnTrail has an incredible tenacity for treating its own material like a toy to fling around when the writers get bored. Then once it's time to progress a plot, they shove it back in the box and forget it ever existed. I've played rounds of Cards Against Humanity that had better narrative structure than this rancid garbage. Zerul has nothing left amounting to a personality. You took the one thing he had, being a skilled warrior, away from him. Now after this, he cowardly goes on the run and has the rest of his soldiers slaughter the people in Solution 9 to replenish his stockpile of souls, and takes his own son hostage. Because after all that bravado and tenacity, our penultimate villain is a little bitch. Because anything more substantial would be too difficult for the writers to handle, and it might make Wook look bad if there was a chance she comes up short against her brother. God, I fucking hate this character. You just know a scene is going to be ruined when Wook enters the stage, because everything must accommodate her. Any threat will become a non-threat. Any impossible task is now serendipitously solved thanks only to her. It's no wonder Zeru and every other antagonist's writing is such a steaming pile. She is all that matters, and she's everywhere in this game, so everything in this game must accommodate her, which is precisely why everything is shit. And now, we're finally at Zeru's boss fight. Super fun, great music, and then the dickhead is dead. I don't know what else to say about this, really. I don't know what there is to analyze. The daddy issues argument has been torn asunder. Zeru has a moment with his own son here, not like there was much to develop. Little Galools does another plot element to help us reach the final zone. Then he too will fade into irrelevance. Though I will not make fun of him. Not doing it. I have my limits. I'm sorry your whole family sucks, little guy. Especially this bottom dollar Thundercats ripoff. Seriously, listen to what she says after Zeru dies. After he laments being left nothing of value by their father.
You think Papa left you nothing? You goddamn fool! You have the one thing he couldn't leave anyone else. You and Galoocha.
Really, Wook? He has himself and his own offspring. You could say that to virtually any orphan in the world. Somehow I doubt they feel comfortable with the knowledge they too can reproduce and then abandon or mistreat said child, continuing the process of abandonment for generations. Troll's ringing dumbass, oh bow. Real talk, my boy. You want to have her culled first chance you get, you deserve better than this. And so do we. Zeru's whole arc was an embarrassment. There was no development, he's a prick at the start and he's a prick at the end. His motivations are nonsensical. We never receive clarification as to why he believes what he does. Details to help us understand where he's coming from. At least Bakul Zha had that going for him. Half-assed as it was, Zeru's connection to Wook, to the family, should have been central to his arc. There's not even a character to analyze, he's that underutilized. I understand DawnTrail suffered a nasty budget cut in its development. I know some things have to give under these circumstances. So, why not cut some scenes with Wook Lamont? Lord knows you have plenty to choose from, and maybe having a little less of her will make her more endearing. Or, well, it certainly couldn't hurt. If you have limits on what you can do, either time-wise or financial, you don't need a tremendous amount of investment in a character to give them depth or complexity. A few select scenes with Zeru could have done the job. I've been using these Red vs. Blue clips a lot. It's high time I gave that series some attention. So let this be another spoiler warning. The chorus trilogy of Red vs. Blue, mainly seasons 12 and 13, will be discussed in detail. I'd like to look at a principal antagonist, Locus, a hired mercenary for what was at the time an enemy faction. Now Locus is cold and quiet, ruthless. Sound familiar? The planet Chorus is at war, with two sides slowly wiping each other out. Our titular color-coded hero soon stumbles across a conspiracy against the two armies, and Locus emerges as a central part of it. Despite his hostile nature, he is a man who strictly follows orders with a borderline religious ferocity, even when it's disadvantageous to him. Our protagonists thwart their plot to wipe out both sides, yet they're left vulnerable in turn. Locus nonetheless refuses to finish them off, as he's not been given any orders to kill them.
They are injured. We can kill them now.
No. We follow orders.
Ridiculous at first, I considered this a plot contrivance. It bothered me for nearly a year, but when season 13 rolled around, we got some much needed background info on Locus's personality that clarified this mindset. The planet hosts a great stash of alien technology, something this clandestine group of villains wants for themselves. In the process of collecting it, Locus stumbles across a gateway of sorts that takes him to a testing ground, somewhere where he can be judged worthy or not of receiving the gifts the planet possesses. You know, I could keep explaining, but for this one, let's just watch the scene, then we'll go over things.
Who are you?
Freeze!
What?
Don't move! Don't you fucking move! Lower your weapon! We will shoot! Now.
What do we have here, men?
Caught us a monster, Captain. I think it understands what we're saying.
Really? Then how about you tell us what you're doing here?
I came through the gateway.
Speak English, motherfucker!
What? Wait. I know you.
Why is it looking at me? Maybe you're just its type.
No. Felix.
I say we blow its brains out.
That's your answer to everything.
Impossible.
Hey! You
quit eyeballing my minute. Give me some answers. Are you alone?
I don't understand. You're all supposed to be dead.
What's it saying?
You're me.
Sir, I think it's trying to surrender.
Bullshit, I think it's stalling. Sir, this feels like a trap.
Why don't you recognize me?
Private, I did not ask you for your opinion.
Listen to me!
Hey, watch it! It's getting hostile.
Sir, this thing's wasting our time, and we're in no position to start taking prisoners.
Fine. You two, move into one of these buildings and take it out. Quietly.
What?
Sir, it's scared. If it's smart, it should be. If we can restrain it, Son, you listen here.
No.
You are a soldier. In this war, you are nothing but a suit of armor and a gun. So when I give you an order, you damn well follow it. Do I make myself clear?
No!
Drop him! Drop him! Locus. It's about goddamn... Hey!
What did you see?
There's a lot to unpack here. For starters, did you notice how Locus wasn't reliving this memory from the third person? Instead, he was in the position of the alien he killed. He's the one surrounded by heavily armed soldiers, scared, frightened, and alone. Emotions Locus would dearly wish to keep locked away. Also note what his commander says.
Son, you listen here.
No.
You are a soldier. In this war, you are nothing but a suit of armor and a gun.
We're starting to see the connections. Locus lived through a horrible battle, something that got the rest of his team killed, and the actions he took to survive taxed him, not just physically but mentally. So he clung to these words: a suit of armor and a gun. Follow orders, nothing else matters. A philosophy Locus took to an extreme when he signed on to commit genocide. And it explains our earlier conundrum when Locus refuses to finish off the Reds and Blues despite it saving them a lot of future grief. Without direct orders, he had no way of justifying such an action, no way of validating it in his fragile, broken mind. This becomes essential when we reach the climax, after their final plan to finish off the planet's inhabitants once again fails. Again, I normally shide a story for having their villain reach a revelation after being defeated. It's cheap and you can't usually trust someone who turncoats only when convenient. For Locus though, it works, as it's only after he loses his mission and his philosophy of following orders no longer applies that he's forced to confront everything he's done.
Why have you come here, meddler?
To kill the simulation troopers.
Will this secure your victory over their forces?
No.
Then what purpose will it serve?
I don't know.
Then why are you trying?
I don't know.
There's no reason to kill them. No orders, not even a desire to kill them. This is the moment where he realizes he was never just following orders. Locus surrendered his will for the safety of another authority, because it was easier, it was safer, but it cost him everything. With this realization, he admits the truth he probably knew all along.
I'm not a soldier. I'm a monster. Like you.
Man, Red vs. Blue had some damn good writing, especially when you remember that the series started out basically as a Halo parody.
Hello, Master Chief. I'm Cortana.
No, not that one. We don't talk about that one. How do you get cancelled after 2 seasons? It's a sci-fi super soldier and his sexy AI girlfriend. You bastards should have been printing money. Honestly, Locus' story is one of the better redemption arcs I've seen. Most of the time, somebody just does 1 or 2 good things, and the story treats them as rehabilitated murderers. Not sure participation trophies should apply in these matters, guys. Maybe up the requirements a bit. All that development and character growth stemmed from a scene that only lasted a couple minutes. Sure, Locus had other moments of exposure where his inner conflict began to spill out.
You can choose to end this now. No, we can't. We have our orders. Right, partner?
But ultimately, it comes back to this. All Zeru needed was a few key moments. Between his family members who are around non-stop and our ability to utilize the Echo, we had everything needed. There was no excuse for Zeru to be this contradictory, this unexplored. The writers just didn't care. Zeru was not a person. He was a plot device, something meant to complete its prerequisite goal of connecting Alexandria to Tyrell for the second act. Both before and after these events, he returned to being shallow and one-dimensional. Even his fight was merely a stepping stone to access the final zone, rather than a chance to understand him better. I mean it, his death passed kingship to his son, which was needed to reach living memory, after which the little chibi lizard has nothing to do either. Zeru's fight wasn't even about him, something we can see by how half-assed his daddy issues argument was, and the immediate shift to Sphen. At last, we reached the final antagonist of DawnTrail. What is there to say about Queen Sphen, the leader of Alexandria? Well, she's an amiable personality, a bit quirky. Her main overarching priority is the well-being of her citizens, to an absolutely inane degree, something she goes to extreme lengths for. and reiterates the importance of this goal rather frequently. She's Wook Lama. Sphen is a carbon copy of Wook Lama. Outside of appearance and general mannerisms, everything else was just copy and pasted from the Genderbit Lion-O. Okay, to be fair, that on its own isn't an issue. I enjoy parallelism. It is a simple but fantastic writing tool, letting you draw comparisons between different people without being so blunt about it. Heavensward, for example, used it to great effect. Both Ysael and Estinian were so driven by their perspectives, fueled by the losses in their lives, it pushed them to near monstrous levels. Ysael tried overthrowing the Holy See, and wound up getting innocent people killed, and it affected her greatly. Estinian's quest for revenge nearly made him no better than the beast he desired vengeance against, Needhog. 3 different people with different backgrounds, all driven by a desire for retribution, and Needhog himself encapsulated the result of anger poisoning your mind, something these two might have become themselves under different circumstances. It doesn't work in DawnTrail because everything is already about Wook Lama, even when she's not around. Like when we were exploring cowboys and aliens, we of course ran into none other than Namika, Wook's freaking wet nurse, a surrogate mother to her. So making the ultimate villain identical in spirit to Wook only gives us more of the same thing we've gotten the entire game. Something that was extremely tiresome by the time we reached Alexandria. And any unique behavior she does possess only makes Sphen's situation worse. Her actions throughout the game are a bit perplexing. You see, she's the one who brought Zeru to her realm. Their reliance on souls, especially the people in living memory, as we'll see, was becoming an Achilles heel. With lowering birth rates, less souls were available to recycle for use, thus the need to invade other areas to collect more. I mean, that's a bit drastic. If low birth rates were the problem, I think there's an easier and much friendlier approach to this debacle. But I suppose the sex isn't something we're supposed to talk about. I'm just saying, slipping aphrodisiacs into people's drinks to stir up the numbers is far less deranged than mass murder, and would be a much better game than what we actually got. Sphen is the reason Tural was attacked. She facilitated the resources the army for Zeru to use. You see her during the assault. It's obvious from the start how distraught she is that it's come to this. But as she will demonstrate, she'll follow this path to whatever end she must. So the second we arrive outside Everkeep, Sphen introduces herself and gets all buddy-buddy. She gives us access to the city, explains how everything works, lets us try some cuisine because of course that's Wook's go-to. She drops a few hints as to her nature as an endless. That was some half-decent foreshadowing, not too bad. If I may inquire, why the fuck is she doing any of this? We're the enemy. It's Wook's people she endeavored for literal decades to harvest. Why would she play nice with the leader of those people? Someone who would never tolerate them being massacred. Sphen's playing nice with us is guaranteed to compromise her goals, not to mention fraternizing with the enemy. Zeru's enemy is liable to paint a bullseye on Sphen and her people. No way that'll become an issue for her later. Speaking of, the story tries to paint Zeru as a cause of her actions. His malice poses a conceivable risk to Alexandria, and Sphen requires outside assistance to deal with him. And already we're seeing some red flags here. Making a pact with Zeru in the first place, I completely understand. He possessed the key to bridge worlds. Bringing him into the fold was vital to get her plan back on track. It's everything else beyond that had me weeping tears of blood. Sphen spent 30 years preparing for this conflict, building his army, the warships. 30 years. She put that much investment into Zeru, not only for the key, but to lead her army, to harvest souls, to maintain not just those in the Everkeep, but living memory. Sphen allowed him into her realm. She is the ultimate orchestrator here. So bringing us in with the intention of thwarting Zeru while his plans to attack Tural are still in development completely contradicts her base goals. What the hell does Sphen want? If it's to preserve her people, then supporting Zeru, no matter how crude or unstable he may be, is paramount. If you see him as a threat, then you've just caused your people nothing but more harm, and your efforts over the last 30 years was a complete waste of time and resources. Very limited resources. Woman, commit to a cause or piss off. Honestly, much of Sphen's behavior through Zeru's boss fight feels completely contrived. She's there to let us explore and help explain this new world to us. But in doing so, she jeopardizes the very mission she's committed herself to. Kakshua, I'm probably butchering that name too, and her people could have handled this function just as well, including sneaking us into the Everkeep. The only other role Sphen's actions play is letting her and Wook connect, something that is comically implemented during the final fight, because it's always about Wook. Sphen, like every other major character in DawnTrail, is acting only to benefit the plot. That is all this comes down to. We need her to get the key from Zeru. We need her to flee to live in memory so we can access it as a final zone. And we need her and Wook to have a sort of bond so Wook can preach her way to victory per usual. Our final antagonist of DawnTrail, and she is also a soulless, mindless husk with no personality beyond what the writers find convenient. How many times is that now? Oh yeah, all of them. Again. Now, Sphen's fears regarding Zeru hardly matter anyway. Even with us around, he still launches his assault onto Rawl. Honestly, Sphen collaborating with us may well have sped up the timetable of his attack. Something that, again, Sphen is in support of. I would also point out that despite his ruthlessness, Zeru had yet to do anything malicious to anybody. It's only after his forces are pushed back. And honestly, sweetheart, what the hell were you expecting? You were actively in league with his enemies. Zeru turning on Alexandria is something you basically brought upon yourself. Everything you've been doing has painted a target on your people's backs. Nice going. Honestly, Sphen shouldn't even have any faith in us. Please remember that we're the ones who kamikazed our way into her realm and killed some of her people already. It's a bit weird Sphen would trust us to handle Zeru, considering we've killed more of her people than he had at this point in the story. Yet, we get a pass. This isn't the only time she decides to trust us after killing her people, by the way. It's a recurring stupidity. Zeru only snaps after his embarrassing defeat at the hands of the baby-killing savages. Yeah, I'm not letting up on that. Now, that may well have been her fear that he would turn on her and her people eventually. Maybe in desperation, Sphen saw no choice but to entertain his malice until another option appeared, which is why she cozied up to us. It's a paper-thin excuse to go back on her ambitions, but with effort and letting a lot of stupid shit go, I can understand that perspective. However, don't yell at me, it's not my fault this game sucks. All this effort to undermine Zeru, just in case he went rogue, is probably part of the reason your Tartarus army got wasted so easily. No matter how we may try and defend Sphen's inconsistent behavior, going against her own goals at the final hour like this wouldn't help ensure its complete failure. And sure enough, they failed. Decades of prep time wasted, meaning that you've officially made your people's plights worse, all in the chance that Zeru turned on you. And sure enough, he did. What luck that her contradictory behavior was exactly what was needed in the end, even if it can be argued that said behavior may well have enticed Zeru's malice in the first place. Pardon the eccentric tone, this game doesn't have an eye roll emote to convey my sarcasm. Or does it? I'll investigate that one later. The game does try to retroactively give her actions a cop-out. Sphen announces her intent to continue her work after we have defeated Zeru, her plan to invade other worlds to harvest souls. Yet, no, you were already doing that, sweetheart. Not sure why you're picking up and moving on to do more of that thing you were just doing, and poorly. If you hadn't had acted against your own interests, this whole bit wouldn't be needed. Just saying, you're back at the beginning. Anyways, Sphen decides to erase her memories, fearing that her weak resolution keeps her from doing what's necessary. This could be seen as the game's attempt to justify her wayward behavior. She can't bring herself to commit, despite what her heart desires. Perhaps that's what drove her to help us, even though it hampered her goals. Drove her to turn on the man she bet everything on to solve her problems, ensuring that her problems would continue. This is a major dilemma, I admit, and willingly erasing herself to ensure she never wavers in her duty again, that would be a fantastic twist for her character, if this were a different game we were talking about. But maybe I'm being too judgmental. Maybe erasing her memories is the best course of action. I mean, a soulless, emotionless robot wouldn't possibly do something remarkably stupid just for the sake of the plot the way Sphen has. Like forcibly exiling her enemies but leaving one behind so that a final fight can happen and compromise her plans. Again, not at all. Not at all. Why would I even suggest something that silly? Why is this character all over the damn place? Why is it that every claim she makes is cancelled by some opposing behavior? It's all the same reason. The same reason the other antagonists were so erratic. She's not a character. Sphen is a tool to advance the plot. She can't claim the key while Zeru still lives. She can't escape to enact her plans without it. The plan she already screwed up entirely through her own doing. If events do not play out exactly as they did, the rest of the story can't happen. That is the only thing that properly explains what's going on, no matter how nonsensical it may be. We've seen villains act in seemingly contradictory ways before, with Emmett Selk, for example. Time and time again, he refrained from harming us as we undo the rejoining. Even when we failed to contain the light, even when we track him down to the Tempest, he keeps guiding us, dancing around the conflict rather than finishing us off. But we already know there are reasons he's like this, starting with the obvious. The light is corrupting us. From his perspective, our time is limited. He doesn't have to kill us to get the rejoining back on track. In fact, it may well be in his best interest not to harm us. And the other scions aren't a threat, so why bother? As for the more subtle reasoning, he wants us to know the truth, to understand how things were, how the present came to be. He wants us
to look, learn, and remember.
He's not just disparaging us for failing to meet his standards. Emmett is imparting the knowledge only he himself possesses. La Habrea went insane and he's dead now. Elidibus's memories are fractured, leaving Emmett Selk as the sole inheritor of Amarant's legacy, until he passes that on to us. Recall what else Emmett told us.
Long have I awaited one who might brave a path of lesser tragedy. A resilient soul able to endure the necessary pain. I dare to hope that my wait is over.
Emmett Selk doesn't lie. Multiple times he is abrasively honest about who he is, what he's about. Now he doesn't tell us everything, but he never lied. He was hoping for something different, somebody to show him the bloody path he's followed for millennia wasn't all there was. Emmett Selk was crafted carefully over an extensive period. So carefully woven was his personality that many of the claims we can make about him are never outright stated. It's a pattern of behavior that shapes him, something too many other characters since Shadowbringers have severely lacked. I hope you'll keep that in mind with future content. It's a major problem in the series. Sphen doesn't have that consistency. She hasn't the time to develop it. Like Wuklama, like everybody else, it's directly stated what she is, what she's about. And anything that defies those claims are simply ignored. It makes it impossible for any claim, any declaration to be taken to heart. Even her desire to safeguard her people is diluted by her actions. Sphen has done far more harm to her people than Zeru's rampage ever could have. Apart from wasting 30 years for a failed conquest, besides letting your dwindling resources be depleted for nothing, it still gets worse. Just listen to this dumbass.
But I can still take up arms and fight.
You and what army? That's not rhetorical. Your military was just defeated, and whatever remains is now under Goluljal's control. He's a good kid, he's not going to hurt anybody. Sphen has acted against her own interests repeatedly, putting her into such a precarious position that she's now retreating to another world to carry out her goals. With zero military support, you have no army. How are you supposed to attack another world with just yourself? By doing everything to oust Zeru from power, you didn't just remove a valuable asset, you robbed yourself of all the resources you'll need to launch a successful assault. All you've done is deplete your chances while doubling down on the same strategy. For any StarCraft players, imagine throwing an entire Zerg army at a perfectly organized array of Terran bunkers and siege tanks. You can throw 1,000 units at them. You'll only die tired. That is in essence what Sphen is doing here. This so-called plan of hers is sheer stupidity, and it hardly registers as a danger on any level. Daniel was a complete moron, and he's far more terrifying than this lowly princess that I'm just going to assume was a product of inbreeding. We could honestly close and shut this case here and now. Sphen will only make things worse for herself. It's all we've seen her do. It's all she ever does. She's an idiot trying to start a war with no army, no support, and her reservoir of souls is nearly empty. This woman has already lost. She has already failed her people in such inconceivable ways it's embarrassing, and the game wants to convince us that it's paramount to chase after her. These idiots couldn't even make the final villain of the game legitimate. The only evil I see is that someone got paid to write this. All this contrived stupidity brings our lofty crew to the manufactured afterlife of Alexandrian citizens, living memory. After most of the cast pisses off to save on the budget, we immediately confront Sphen, trying in vain to convince her to deter this madness. And you know what I found extraordinary about this realm, this place that holds such importance to Sphen? The fact that it has zero security measures to keep unwanted people out. I mean, living memory is specifically for the endless. Why would still living people with physical bodies be able to enter this place? Sphen abandoned her machine form when she fled here, and some things, like the food, has no taste, no sensation to us. It's miraculous that we can even breathe. I mean, it'd be mighty inconvenient if absolutely anything else about this place was incompatible with us. What luck, again! This whole situation had my head pounding. If Sphen had the power to banish anybody from the zone, this whole conflict ends now, an ability that is wildly practical for her to have, seeing as to how you're willing to commit genocide to preserve this place and the people within it. Having a few safety measures in case of reprisal is more than reasonable. This is like having a safe deposit box with all your spare cash, but you never bother to lock it. The most rudimentary security measures were all that was needed to make our efforts on living memory pointless, and they simply don't exist. Sweet Lord, it is stupid how lackadaisical this whole place is. The only canonical excuse I could conjure was that living memory is operating on limited power, and I could accept that if it was just us not getting booted out immediately. Under those circumstances, we could argue Sphen lacks sufficient power to do so. Though that doesn't work because of something that happens later. Everything else, namely the terminals, do not get that cop-out. We're going there. The Endless are maintained by 4 terminals that, if deactivated, makes everything and everyone disappear for good. Except for the monsters, can't have that many conveniences. And said terminals are completely unprotected. No security, no guards. Not even a barrier. All one needs is apply a bit of ether to power them down. We do this 4 separate times, and nothing tries to stop us. Okay, maybe we can argue that the people here don't possess ether themselves, so the terminals are normally safe. But since there's clearly no way to bar intruders, and Sphen herself didn't seem bothered by our presence, that is a very stupid oversight on her part, as stupid as everything else about this story. Sphen wants to kill innocents to save these people, and yet she has no way of removing intruders, no way of protecting them, and no defenses for the only things keeping these people intact. How? What? Why is everything about this place so supernaturally stupid? All of this is retarded. All of this is contrived, lazy, inept, incompetent. Such little effort was applied to the final zone of what was supposed to be the introduction of a new arc in the series. And yet no effort was made to make it appealing. It makes our final boss a moron. It makes all her efforts pointless. Everything here is a joke. This game is a joke. Nobody who developed this could have possibly taken it seriously. It's not physically possible. And to top it all off, it turns us, the supposed heroes of this story, into mass-murdering psychopaths. We play the villain better than any of the fucking villains did when we shut down the terminals and kill these people. That claim, for some incomprehensible reason, is a point of contention for some. I've seen it on my channel, and some others. Shit, even the Final Fantasy Wiki, all trying to defend what we did in living memory. They argue that the people here are just reconstituted memories. They don't have souls, they're not alive. It isn't murder. I am getting some major deja vu right now. Cannot recall where I've heard this before.
I do not consider you to be truly alive, ergo, I will not be guilty of murder if I kill you.
There it is. We're committing heinous, villainous acts, using the same rationale made by previous antagonists for the heinous, villainous acts they commit. The person who wrote this script is a genuine psychopath. Only a psychopath with no empathy could write something like this and pass it off as something morally sound. Let's put this fucking argument to rest, shall we? Yes, these people are not alive in the traditional sense. They don't have souls. They are the extracted memories of those who once lived. But from these people's perspectives, they're still alive. They still feel, they still laugh and play and create new memories within this realm. How can you not be alive and still feel emotions? How does that work? This isn't like the Phantom Amarot where the people were mere effigies. And do consider, do you really want that to be the case? That everyone we interacted with isn't alive? Any Wooklamaw lovers in the crowd, you're gonna tell me this moment means nothing. She's already dead, she's just pre-programmed memories. It's no big deal. Otis and his PTSD, no point feeling sorry for the big guy, right? He's already dead. Those emotions are simulated, they mean nothing. They must mean nothing. Otherwise, what we do here is completely fucked up on an unholy level. All these children you see playing, all these people meeting up with their loved ones after being separated for ages. It's okay, guys. They're all dead. It's nothing to get worked up over. And are we really going to argue that Kryle's time with her parents meant so little? The woman got shunned in this game as is, and one of the only good parts she has is being cheapened by arguing that her parents aren't even alive, just to excuse the genocide we commit. It just gets worse the more we try to defend it. What's more though, these people still need souls to survive. They can't rely on regular old ether. They need energy specifically derived from souls. So even in this state, they still need something equivalent to a soul to remain, to survive. And if you want to argue this requirement isn't set in stone, then we heartlessly murdered these people without considering any alternatives, which again makes us look worse. No, people, the Endless are still alive. They are sentient, they are aware, and process emotions and experiences just like everything else outside of living memory. I am disturbed by how many people are arguing this point. Mimicking the defense of a mass-murdering psychopath to defend ourselves should be cause to admit oneself to the mental ward. I loved Emmett Selk, don't misunderstand. He is one of the best things to have happened to this series. But that doesn't make him a role model. What the Ascians did was monstrous, and what we did here is monstrous. Also a little side note, all these games talk about understanding other cultures and appreciating their unique values and whatnot gets derailed by this moment too. Remember that the Yoke Toy argued that as long as someone's remembered and never really gone? The people in living memory are not remembered by the people in the rest of the Everkeep. We see this with Aaronville when he tries finding his mother. Nobody remembers her because she's already dead. Her memories are erased from everybody. The people in living memory are not remembered outside of it. So when we kill these people, no one remembers them. No one's gonna know who they were. All these people you see running around, loved ones meeting up again, they're gone completely. Their souls, their memories, their impact on the people who ever knew them. We did that. Still feel like a hero? Although, this fact is the crux of the issue. Souls are required to sustain the endless, and that's coming at the cost of human lives. Killing one ensures the other survives. Both cannot live. Hear me now, loud and clear. I agree with this. Preserving the endless as they are would only make victims of others. That is not a just decision at all. Where the problem lies, where I draw the line in this scenario, is our utter indifference to the action itself. We are too fucking casual about this. Too nonchalant. The game really does treat our genocide like a pleasure stroll through the fucking Matrix. It's insane. There's a major difference between the moral conundrum in, say, Shadowbringers, where we defeat Immitsilk and Elidibus, sealing the fate of the Ancients for good, and what we have in DawnTrail. We are the ones pulling the trigger here. We killed these people. Directly. We did not stop them from reviving like with Amarant. It wasn't even a defensive move. Sphen had already lost, as established. She was running away. We were safe. And we pulled the plug, and did not feel sorry for it. Did not lament what we were taking away. The only time we hesitated was when we serendipitously encountered people we had connections with, like Cryle's parents, like Otis. Mighty selfish we only tapped the brakes on the mass murdering for our own comfort. We never allow these people to make the decision for themselves, to let them say their final goodbyes to one another, to grant closure, peace. We shot him in the back of the head like Lenny while he ranted on about the rabbits. We never even considered asking the Endless how they would feel about their beloved queen slaughtering innocents for their sake. Maybe they would reject that. Imagine the whole of living memory confronting Sphen and demanding she stand down to do them proper justice. It'd be cheesy, sure, but 1,000 times better than Wook interrupting our fight.
Sphen! Listen to me!
Hell no, you've had enough screen time, piss off. For us to barely question this task, to not ponder if there was another way, another power source to save the Endless, is beyond demented. At the very least, let us finish with Sphen before tending to this issue. Let me remind you all, deleting the Endless was not pivotal to our fight. It did not weaken or compromise Sphen in any way. She never even references what we did to her people. All of this, everything in living memory, it was a goddamn side quest. Its purpose was padding out the runtime. That was all it was, besides the genocide we commit. This whole scenario encapsulates one of the major issues I had with Endwalker, where we abandoned the Amberteens to an absolutely horrific fate, and we were just fine with it. Our time in Elpis resulted in the final days becoming inevitable, but during that time we got to see those who would one day become our enemy, reprehensible as they were, cruel and unforgiving, until we saw who they really were, who they used to be, before it was taken away, before their memories were robbed of them, barring them from making informed decisions on what would soon transpire. And we never reflect on this. We don't feel bad. We don't feel anything. We don't share our sorrow with somebody. We don't question if it was better to have changed history, potentially avoid all this tragedy. It wouldn't be the first time we erase a calamity from history, mind you. That was the literal plot of Shadowbringers. But no, nothing. It was treated as necessary. We, the players, were denied questioning anything before us. We became NPCs ourselves, mindless automatons marching wherever commanded to, directly over a mountain of corpses. It's nice to see DawnTrail continue that tradition. We pulled the trigger in Elpis too. The situation was more complicated, sure, but our involvement cannot be understated. We abandoned the Amberteens to their fate. We, and Vana as well, refused to try and change history after Medion escaped. Even though we have changed history before, that's a rant for later. In both Elpis and Living Memory, we are the ones with the bloodied knife, and both games try to tell us it was the right thing to do. You know, at least in Shadowbringers with Amarant, they had died millennia ago, but then Endwalker botched that scapegoat for us, thanks to time travel. And now, there will always be the question for the Endless. Just like in Elpis, was there nothing that could have been done? And why did we never consider it? Why was it never even asked? And I answer thus. They didn't care. The writers didn't care. And so neither do our characters, neither does the story. There have been some disturbing moral choices made in this game of late. It's starting to make me very uncomfortable. And this is from a guy who appreciates some moral ambiguity in his stories. And this probably explains why the finale was such an unbridled nightmare. Yes, we are finally near the end.
Whoop-de-fucking-do.
God, I'm tired. Tearing this crap game apart has been a full-time gig, not to mention the brain cells lost playing it. So we assault Sphen's tower, get some lovely flashbacks that we didn't really need to see. I swear, Amaral did it first and better, and now every final dungeon since then has tried to copy it. Alas, as soon as we confront Sphen, now devoid of her memories, personality, and weaknesses, what does she do almost immediately?
Obstructions to the plan will be summarily removed. Be gone from my presence.
Oh my. Would you look at that? Yes, sons of bitches. She can expel people from her domain. What a neat mechanic that would have come in handy if Sphen could use that absolutely anywhere else. My goodness, the very specific handicaps in this game continue to mesmerize.
You pose the single greatest threat. As such, you will be erased, here and now.
Oh, great, wonderful, another bad guy cliche. Not removing the threat and giving them the opportunity to defeat you. I see Zeru's jaw rubbed off on you. The final battle at the climax of the story. We're bored, we're tired, we're pissed off. And this is what you give us. It is beyond mortal comprehension the writers haven't accidentally swallowed their own tongues. Now, okay, the boss fight was overall pretty good. I know people have been clamoring over the content quality, and you're right, the fights in DawnTrail are damn decent. Dungeons and Trials both were the right blend of tough and enjoyable. Even the fates have been improved drastically. It's just not enough to compensate for...
Sphen! Listen to me!
And we're back to the clown show, folks. It never ends. I can't decide what's the most annoying part of this. Wook interrupting our fight, having her preach and lecture after interrupting our fight, or the fact she's dealing some serious haymakers, suggesting she's our equal. Woman, you are not. Do not pretend. Do not go there. No, these are all bad, stupid, annoying. But you know what takes the grand prize for DawnTrail's worst fucking moment happens right here.
I will protect my people's happiness!
Leave that burden with us now. We will carry in your stead.
Your voice reached me, Lamachi. I am, above all, sorry for the suffering I've caused your people and mine.
Okay. Alright. Okay. I mentioned this in the last video. Here and now, I'ma tear into it. Because, Sphen, honey, why the sweet mother of holy fuck are you listening to anything we have to say? You did all this for the sake of the endless. You committed murder, genocide, started a war that claimed innocent lives. And you were planning on hopping to another reality to do more of the same. You did all that for these people we just erased. Yes, the residents of Solution 9 remain, but the Endless are all gone because of us and Wook. And now, we are telling you, we'll take care of your people after murdering your people. And you just buy that. This will be like coming home to a complete stranger standing over the corpse of your significant other, bloody baseball bat in hand, and they tell you not to worry. They'll look after your family. You go take a rest. You've had a rough day, sport. Of all the contrived all the stupidity, all the self-indulgent dick-sucking the writers have committed in the process of this ridiculous, seizure-inducing narrative, this is a new low I would have never thought possible. Does Sphen not know what we did? I mean, all this happens right after her memory wipe was completed. She may have been too preoccupied to notice. Which means, we committed mass murder, willfully lied about it, and acted like decent, upstanding human beings to dissuade Sphen from committing mass murder herself. Yeah, that's not an improvement, folks. Personally, I find it ridiculous she never knew. Look out a fucking window, lady. With all the high-tech options at your disposal, basic observation skills shouldn't be a conundrum. Worst yet, Sphen is somehow at peace over this. She should not be. She should be angry, furious, mad and beyond reason that we have robbed her of the only thing left that meant something to her. Because that is how sentient human beings behave. They react to the stimuli before them, even with her memories and personality wiped. Safeguarding her people is Sphen's one and only desire. She would not let things go, least of all with a smile on her face. This is not how normal human beings behave. Honestly, if you told me chunks of DawnTrail script were produced with AI writing, I would believe you. Sphen's reaction to Wook's offer is peak stupidity and a story chock full of peak stupidity. She should have self-destructed and taken us with her. That would be more reasonable than relinquishing her remaining people's well-being to the literal mass murderers in her midst. We've killed more innocent people than Sphen and Zeru put together. Just you think about that as we watch her play nice with us. It's absolutely insane. The exhausting tens of hours we were forced to play through just to get this overstuffed septic tank of an ending. It's unsatisfying. I do not know what the hell Square was thinking. I do not understand how they could look at this and decide to release it to the public. And most of all, I cannot for the life of me figure out what we the players did to deserve this. Somebody explain, please. I am desperate. I'm sure many of you are too. The plot was mediocre. The pacing was so dragged out it put people to sleep. The characters and their agency are non-existent. The villains are non-threatening, to half-assed, to straight-up asinine. And the only person who got attention, the only person the story had a hint of regard towards, was conceited, annoying, and juvenile. Someone who, in the writer's misguided pursuit to Validator, derailed the entire narrative until every facet fell apart before our very eyes. There are a few good things we could talk about. DawnTrail wasn't without its charm, but right now it's too much work. I'll just take DawnTrail's stunning example and not waste my time trying. That's just as good, according to their work ethic. So Square has recently responded to the backlash. I won't delve into it much, but Yoshibi himself has stated on record that they had anticipated a negative reception. Whether that's true or they're saying that to placate anger, who the hell knows. If it was anticipated, then Square knowingly gave us a shit product we waited 2.5 years for, which does not inspire faith nor loyalty, especially since now we have to wait another 2+ years to properly mend these issues. The post-story patches are only a handful of hours each, and each patch is a handful of months apart. There's not much we can do with that, which means we don't have much choice but to wait until the next expansion drops. DawnTrail is the worst video game I think I've ever played. I even debate calling it a video game. It's too boring, too devoid of entertaining content despite what some defenders argue. It barely has a story to tell, and we are the ones keeping it afloat every goddamn month like clockwork. And please consider what is going to happen when 7.1 drops, and one of the first things, if not the very first thing we're told to do is talk to Wuklama.
Church! Church! It's me! Your all-time best friend! Caboose? Caboose, is that you? Yes! Church, it's me! I have missed you so much! It has been so long! Did you miss me? Fuck! I missed him! I know you did! Go away!
Yeah, I haven't strong hope for any of us. All of this being said, I am of the opinion that a decent critique doesn't just bash a crap product in a sadistic fervor, though that's way more fun, let's not kid ourselves. I created this channel with the hope that we could create enough waves to steer the writing back on course. This series has had some of my favorite gaming moments of all time. I still love it, as difficult as that is right now. So for the immediate future, I would like to start exploring the story in closer detail. Along with continuing the critique, we're going to turn this series moving forward into a rewrite, identify the flaws, and see what could be done to improve them, be it by tweaking the writing or killing it with fire. There will be ample quantities of both. If you do not care about a different approach and only want to hear people tearing the game apart, fear not. There is plenty left to shit on with this game, and unlike fossil fuels and self-esteem, vitriol is an unlimited resource. Apart from that, this channel got its start tackling Endwalker's writing, and I intend to get back to that. A certain someone has gotten off easy for long enough. I know there may be some dispute with that. With DawnTrail's embarrassment, many of us will be flocking back to previous expansions to relive the good times. There's no judgment, I'm still reminiscing over Shadowbringers myself. All the same, I hope you will tune in for that and join in the conversation. All of that, and I have a few other video ideas outside of 14 I'd like to tackle. Also, as a side note, I apologize for this one taking so long to get out. I will try to keep future videos from running as long as this. It was never the intent, but the more I looked into things, the more problems I found, thus the shitstorm that is this video. You let me know what you guys prefer, shorter videos or longer ones. If anything, I'll mix it up a bit. There's been a lot of traffic through here lately, and I appreciate all the feedback and the support, and I look forward to keeping you guys invested. As always, leave your comments down below, like and subscribe. We have a long way to go yet. I'll see you all then.